Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back, Heat Seekers. You guys haven't seen my face in a little bit. Obviously, Brad took over for me here for the 2021 season, but hell, he only did 2 weeks, and then he decides that it's time for a vacation. I mean, gotta fill in. But, you know, myself working on a couple other new shows for during the day, which is easier for me. But we've got Sully here, and we've got a great guest, Scott Simpson from Nimblw with Numbers, at Nimblw W Numbers on Twitter. I can't talk.
Tweeters.
It's like it's the first time I've ever done this before, right?
It gets easier, man. Hang in there.
So, first of all, Scott, I want to know how London is doing. I don't know if you know this. I lurk in Clubhouse. I heard your story and London's story, and I just actually had a memory on my Facebook from 5 years ago. 5 years ago last week, where I had a tumor removed from my neck. And it was kind of an odd story because I didn't know it was a tumor when I went in to get it removed. They didn't know until they went in to remove it. They thought it was just a cyst. And they tell me that it might be cancer. And I get to the car, and my best friend's niece, who was 4 at the time, had been diagnosed with leukemia that day. And there was a picture of her. She was just smiling, right? It was like she didn't know, obviously, but she was happy. And it changed my life and my viewpoint on everything. Luckily for me, it wasn't. But I heard your story, so I want to know how London's doing. And then I want you to tell everybody, you know, what you do and where they can find you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Rick. London is doing really, really well. So she got diagnosed with leukemia last January, and she'd been battling it for about 6 months before that. We've been getting her tested, different things. We hadn't been able to find out what it was. And it was hard. Last year was really tough. You know, going through chemo, it just knocks you out. It kills your body. It's what it does. You lose all your hair, obviously, and other things happen. And sometimes there we didn't know what was how it was gonna shake out, and if she was gonna make it or not. And there's still things that could happen, but she's doing great. I mean, her hair is all back. She's gone through the hardest part is behind her now. She's in the maintenance phase, and that's just a much better phase to be in. And so we're doing great over here. We're excited. We just got done spring break. Unfortunately, my job does not allow me to work from, I'm a teacher, so that's what I do. I am a third grade teacher here in Maryland, and unfortunately, though, my job did not let me continue teaching remotely. They said I had to come in. Given London's condition, I'm not able to come in, given all the COVID situation. So I took long-term leave, and I am off until next school year, so I am doing great too. I'm working on content for myself over at NimblWnumbers.com, over at theFantasyMillionaires.com, and then my story is I am just somebody who loves football to the point where it just has kind of spilled out and turned into what I'm doing now. It was not my goal. I never said I'm going to start a website or start doing stuff on Twitter with fantasy football. I just was a fan, following people like JJ Zacharyson, Danny Carter, Sigmund Bloom, things like that. Just following people and enjoying content. And then I started creating it too this year, and it's been a wild ride. And so we just got picked up by the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, and we have a show on Monday night at 10. I have a show on Friday nights at 11 as well. And then Matt McCoy over at FanTeamAdvice asked me to do a podcast on Thursday nights, and we do it's called the Fantasy Football Hot Stove. And so, you know what? Business is booming. I'm not getting paid anything. It's all for free and for fun, but it's great to be sharing, the space with you guys and everybody else who loves football, to the point where we'll take up our time to do this and to talk about kind of where the state of football is all the time, every week, even when there's not football on. So I'm excited to be part of the community and excited to talk with you and Sully today just about what's going on and where we're at in the season so far.
Yeah, that's definitely the way it goes, right? It's a very hard industry to especially on your own, right? Like you could probably get a job in the industry a lot easier, but if you want to create something on your own, it takes a lot of time, and we've been at it here for a long time, but we love what we've seen from you, and very excited to have you join the RotoHeat family and get you out there to some people that maybe haven't heard of you yet, and vice versa. So Sully.
Yeah,
it's
man.
been a week since everybody's seen you, but how have you been?
I've been great. I'm as always every Tuesday night, just thrilled to be here. and have the opportunity to banter on the crazy things in my head and get them out, and to have you back on a stream. I haven't streamed with you since our crazy Thanksgiving episode last year, which was wild in its own. And Scott, I've long been a fan, been touched by your story, and I'm glad to hear things are going in the right direction. You got such a beautiful young daughter there. It fills my cup to hear that she is doing better, and now to be able to come on and talk about some nonsense like fantasy football with you is a true pleasure. So I'm very much looking forward to this tonight.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate both you guys. Yeah.
100%.
All the DMs, all the encouragement. That's the cool part about this, is that, we get to do a show and people are like, oh, they're doing a show, but there's other stuff that goes into it, and relationship building that's my favorite part about all this, is that, we get to be able to care for each other as people. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on today.
100%. And I'm glad our show's on Tuesday night based on your schedule. I don't think we were getting it if we were on any other night. So
I was thinking the same thing when he was rattling all that off.
Yeah.
I was like, well,
Monday, Wednesday,
it looks like
Friday.
the 1 hour that he's free, we locked him up.
Yeah.
He's probably thinking, man, I could be laying around watching a show or something right about now, or spending some time with London.
I'm just excited that I don't have to produce the show, because I produce all my shows, and I do. And for the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, there's commercials and there's sounders, and I'm like running the board, and it's just so stressful. The show is great, but then at the end of the night, you're just like, oh damn. And so I'm just excited I can just come here and just talk to guys and not have to worry about all the behind the scenes stuff, and just, be myself. And this is going to be exciting. Tuesday is a great little window for me, because it's in between all the stuff I have to do. So I'm in a great spot. So I'm excited. I've been prepping all day for this.
I definitely understand that one. I felt the same way. This is only the second show that I've done since the football season ended. But during the football season, I was doing 2 and 3 every week. And I joined the Front Yard Fantasy fellas over there on their game show once, and I was like, oh man, why don't I do this more often? Why don't I just go on other people's stuff and not have to worry about it? But I'm actually using my Stream Deck that I just got in for the first time, so I might hit wrong buttons at some point and put wrong stuff up on the screen, but hey, we're learning, right? We're learning. All right, so first up, we've got some news with Sam Darnold being traded from the Jets to the Panthers for a 2021 second or a 2021 sixth and a 2022 second and fourth. We're gonna go right to you, Scott, and why don't you tell us what your thoughts are about this Darnold trade and who benefits the most and all that fun stuff.
So, I think the Jets really do benefit the most. Getting a second round and a fourth round in 2022, I like that. I mean, 6th rounder's fine, this year, but I think it's going to be good for the Jets, because they're going to be able to whatever quarterback. Here's the thing: the Jets are going to probably ruin it anyway. So let me just say, it should be good for the Jets, but they're going to find a way to mess this up. I know they will. I know they'll probably draft Zach Wilson or somebody. They'll not do what they should do. They won't draft Justin Fields like they should. And they'll waste the picks. That's what I think. But I think it's good for everybody but Teddy Bridgewater. We'll talk about that later. But I think Sam Darnold needs a new start. I think you can just see. I watched a video of him coming into his house in Carolina today, or wherever he was coming into, and people were welcoming him. He had a big smile on his face, and I mean, being under Adam Gase just seemed like misery. Every time he would just be in a press conference, or he'd be sharing information, it would just be like, that's the guy that tells Sam Darnold what to do. No wonder Sam Darnold looks like he's dazed and confused every time he drops back. So I think it's a win-win for hopefully everybody, and Sam Darnold has another chance to kind of make a name for himself and restart and a fresh new place that'll embrace him as well. I think they're looking for somebody who can be there more long-term, and I think the second rounder and the fourth rounder kind of show this is not just a 1 or 2 year deal, that they want him for a little bit longer, maybe 3-4 years. So we'll see. I don't think he's anything more than a 500 or a few games over 500 quarterback. I don't think he's elite at all. So maybe they wasted their picks and it's not going to be successful. I don't know. I don't like Sam Darnold overall. I just don't. I mean, it's not something that moves the needle for me. For fantasy, I like it, but not for the Carolina. Carolina is not going to be a very good team next year. So.
Sully, what are you thinking?
I like it for both to be honest, I'm of the opinion that the Jets should have kept Darnold and rolled with him this season and used that second round draft capital either to trade down and fill a bunch of holes or fill some more pressing needs in their offense or their defense. They chose to go a different route, and that's fine. I like the return they got from Carolina because, to Scott's point, I don't think Carolina is going to be very good. So that second and fourth could be pretty decent. Like that second round pick could be picked 36 or something along those lines, which is almost a late first. So I like that for them. And I like it for Carolina because I do think they needed a bit of an upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater. And Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson have a little bit of a relationship. Back in 2018, when Todd Bowles knew that he was getting fired, he kind of took the reins off of Sam Darnold. In the last 3-4 weeks of that season, Darnold was hooking up with Robbie Anderson on a weekly basis. I think Anderson was like a top 10 fantasy wide receiver in those 4 weeks. And Darnold wasn't lighting the world on fire, but he was a top 15 quarterback, which anyone who has a share of Sam Darnold would absolutely take in a heartbeat. So I like it for both. I probably like it a little bit more for the Jets because I do think that they're going to get some pretty decent assets out of that second and fourth round pick a season from now.
Yeah, I agree with both of you, except for I was a Darnold fan coming out. Right now, I have no idea. But as a Bears fan, I remember the season Adam Gase was with us. And then I remember the years that he was in Miami and then in New York. And there's been, when you look at the entire thing, right, there's so many players that have broken out after he has left somewhere. And I'm just wondering, or after they got away from him, I'm just wondering if that's going to be the case here. Because, I mean, you can go back to, looking at Tannehill, his 2 worst years were with Gase. Parker didn't break out. Landry had success. Then you look at the Jets, and Darnold didn't have success. Wide receivers didn't have success except for Jamison Crowder, who is kind of the same player as Landry. So when you look at how Anderson left and had success, had his best year with Bridgewater even, who's not the greatest of the quarterbacks, it just makes you wonder how much effect that did have on Darnold, and if he's going to break out. I couldn't think of a better situation in terms of, Judge has been pretty good with quarterbacks and has that, I'm losing my words here. I'm not used to this host.
You're doing good, man.
But he has that reputation is the word I was looking for with quarterbacks. So, it's up in the air. Darnold was a guy that I was looking to buy. I think, if you watch the Front Yard Fantasy episode today, they were talking about the Wentz effect, right? Where his price just jumps because he gets moved. So he's not in that buy category for me right now. If that dies down before the season, he could get back in there. But if we don't like him that much, then, he might not even win the job if they don't trade Teddy, which I think they've given Teddy the okay to look for a trade. That may even be on our news here. If there is a place now, I mean, this is kind of late, right? Because teams have already been trading up to get their quarterback in the draft. We've seen some big trades in regards to that. Do we see get moved? What do you think there, Scott?
I was looking at the different teams and looking at cap space and who would be able to just kind of bring in another quarterback. And there's not many that I think would want to do it right now before the draft. I think once the draft shakes out, there might be more of a market for him when you figure out where people have landed and where teams have kind of gone. I don't know what the Broncos are going to do. I don't believe that Drew Lock is the answer for them. I mean, maybe they want to bring somebody in to give him a run for their money. I don't know. But I don't see Bridgewater demanding. If he's going to get traded, a team's going to be bringing him, I think, in as camp fuel to bring somebody along. Maybe if you draft a young quarterback, you can bring Teddy in and help support them. But I don't think he's going to be a starting quarterback next year. I just don't think he will be. So.
Jordan in the chat. For everybody that doesn't know Jordan, make sure to check him out. Another one that has had a lot of success in DFS. So Make sure you look him up, Jordan Vanek on Twitter. But he says, as a Panthers fan, I'm excited as hell for Darnold. I look at it this way. Joe Brady makes Darnold good. The Bears are sending a blank check over to him when they fire Nagy.
I love Jordan.
I wish that Nagy wasn't there now. But we'll see what happens there. But I can't wait for the next head coach as a Bears fan. So, Sully, what are your thoughts there on Bridgewater? Is he getting moved? Is he starting this year? What's going on?
I think it's interesting, right? Because you guys both mentioned teams kind of jockeying in the first round and trying to trade into positions where they can get their next guy. And Carolina was one of those teams that's been trying to move around and get their guy. So now I guess we can say that Darnold is at least their guy for the next season. And I think, when you give a guy permission to seek a trade, the writing's on the wall. So I think that they're going to encourage Teddy and help Teddy in any way they can to facilitate a trade for him. I think there's enough respect for him within that organization that they'll do so. I do think Denver is probably the most logical place if he's going to start. But Denver's sitting there at 9. And is Atlanta making the pick at 4? Who knows? So I don't see that happening anytime towards or before the draft, to Scott's point. I think he's a backup quarterback. And I don't know why, but all day long I've been thinking he makes sense in Seattle. They never had a backup quarterback worth a lick. And if anything happens to Russell Wilson, that team is done. At least Teddy can keep the lights on and maybe move the chains a little bit and get you a few points on a weekly basis. So I think maybe he goes there. And I haven't looked at the cap. And I think the team picking Teddy up, it's going to cost him about $10 million this year. So that's not in a season where the cap is a little bit tight. It's not insignificant, but it's not a big amount of dough either. So I think he gets moved. I just really don't know when or where.
Yeah, looking at the teams that need somebody and have the cap space and all that, it's real hard to figure out. Plus, we all know the cap manipulation is as bad as the stock market. So somebody that doesn't look like they have it today could have plenty of it tomorrow. But I thought Steelers and the Giants were both two teams that were interesting. One because they have an old quarterback. The other one because they have a quarterback that is kind of in the same boat as Darnold was last year, right? Where it's if he doesn't make that drastic improvement, they're going to want to look elsewhere because they've got a lot of talent on that offense. And if they can't get them the ball, then they have to make a move. Obviously, the Bears were rumored last year to have signed him, and then within an hour that was retracted, and he had signed the contract with Carolina. But they've got Foles, so they don't really fit unless they can move Foles. Obviously, he's been rumored to Indy at times, so there would have to be multiple moves to make that work. It's for Teddy, it sucks, right? Because it's such a late move in regards to all the moves that have already been made at quarterback. And a lot of the teams that were needy have filled that or are in line to fill it during the draft. So speaking of quarterbacks, this Aaron Rodgers drama has not really, outside of the season where he wins MVP before last season, and then as soon as the season ended, the drama has just continued to roll for Aaron Rodgers. And he doesn't really help the situation any because he says some of these things and he knows how people will react to him. Sometimes I feel like he just likes drama. But he has continued to say that he doesn't have a play in his future. He doesn't have much control over it. Obviously, everybody knows the draft last year. That was the funnest piece of content I've ever had was live streaming the draft with Packers fans on stream. It was great. I loved it. But is this the last season that we see Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay? That's my question. I think he wants to stay in Green Bay, and that would be his goal, is to finish his career in Green Bay. But I think he also feels like he can play into, till he's 43, 44 years old, like Tom Brady. I don't think they have that same vision for him. So, Scott, do we see one more year of Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay and then see them move on?
I didn't think that originally. Even when they drafted Love, I didn't think that my mind didn't kind of just go, oh yeah, I just thought, okay, that was kind of odd. Okay. But I didn't really think long term. And the more that I've thought about it, though, it doesn't look great for their long-term relationship. It just doesn't, because how long are they going to keep him on that contract? You know, they're going to have him for 4 years and he's not going to play, and they're going to be like, we got to get that 5th year. Got to make sure he get. I mean, if he's played or he's been in the league for 5 years and he hasn't even played, that's a wasted pick. Honestly, like you made a big mistake in that pick. You could have gotten somebody, a DBB, a lineman, an edge rusher, somebody to help your team win now. So I think they're going to be push comes to shove. Something's going to happen. And I don't see LaFleur. LaFleur just got there, you know, and he's just entrenching himself further. And that's where I see the problems going. I don't know if you guys caught Jeopardy the other day, but when one of the guys, he lost, he was not going to win, and he put down his answer, his final answer to whatever the question was, who decided to kick that field goal? You know, who wanted to kick the field goal? And Aaron Rodgers laughed. He loved it. And at the end, he was like, you're my man. Like, I like you. And he made a big point to, you know, highlight that he liked the guy who was questioning the decision-making in Green Bay. And so part of that is ego, like you mentioned, but also he is, to me, the most Peyton Manning-esque football player that we still have. I know Tom Brady does that kind of stuff too, but he's just so much smarter than the defense. And when he goes up there and he sees it, I feel like sometimes he feels, maybe I'm jumping into his scheme, he's encumbered by his coach, not supported or not and lifted up and given everything he could be to be the best Aaron Rodgers. So he's kind of like, I'm doing this myself. And that's where I see a little bit of the problem, you know, kind of like you said, next year, if he doesn't get what he wants, if Love doesn't get traded or whatever doesn't happen, he could just go, I'm going to decide to do something different somewhere else. I'm going to go on Jeopardy. I'll do whatever I want. And he's a smart enough person that he could. And he could do whatever he wants. And that, you know, that scares people. So honestly, I love it. I just can't wait to see what happens with him. He is one of my favorite football players. And I like arrogant people if they can back it up with being the best. And he is one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's an all-time one of the best quarterbacks of all, you know, maybe top 10. So I love it. I want him to play until he's 50, honestly. That's my.
Sully, as a Vikings fan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't want to see him play until he's 50. I can tell you that.
Not in the division, at least, right?
Yeah, he can play wherever the hell he wants. Just get out of the North, man. It's frustrating as a Vikings fan because he is truly one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever seen. He's in a very select company, and he's the kind of guy that whenever I'm watching a game with the Packers in it, I expect the Packers to win regardless of how much time's on the clock and regardless of the score. When it comes to Aaron Rodgers, I don't really know what Green Bay is doing other than perhaps this is the Favre-Rodgers scenario playing out again. You know, Aaron Rodgers falling in the draft that year and Green Bay sitting there and going, well, we might as well take him. And I know that really wasn't the situation with Jordan Love, but there's got to be a reason they took him. And Rodgers' contract gets a little bit more manageable into next season. I think he's still going to be a $30+ million cap hit, but they can cut him and save 20 some odd million dollars against the cap. Now, I don't think you cut Aaron Rodgers, but there's outs there. And the other thing with the Jordan Love draft pick, to me, lit a fuel under Aaron Rodgers. And he kind of went on a national FU tour last year and just lit everybody up, and he won the MVP. So the Packers have also rumored to have approached Rodgers about restructuring his contract, and I haven't heard anything about that since. Now, we talked about it, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I said, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'll restructure my contract only if I can control how you spend the money I give you. Because he's never been given a weapon. He's never been given any assets of any significance. And he's arguably one of the best quarterbacks of his era. And the fact that that team's won 2 Super Bowls with 2 of the greatest quarterbacks ever in, 30 years is ridiculous. I like it, but it's ridiculous. So I don't even know if I'm answering the question. I'm just ranting about Aaron Rodgers, but I think there's a very good chance that he's done at the end of this season. But I think it's Aaron Rodgers' decision to make and no one else's at this point.
Yeah, that I don't know. Because when Aaron Rodgers is saying it's not his decision, I feel like there's something going on behind the scenes that makes him feel like he's not wanted there the same way he wants to be there. And that's the only thing that really makes me think this really could be the end. But we've seen it with Tom Brady, right? Every team that doesn't have a Russ Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen are going to be in line trying to get him if he is available after this season.
Oh, yeah.
Because I said it last year with Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers. Not only do you get a quarterback he's not at his peak, right? And I mean, Rodgers is a little bit different because he just won an MVP and played fantastic, but those guys also changed the culture in that locker room. And we've seen it, like, literally the difference between the Buccaneers in 2019 and in 2020 was just drastically different. And that's what another franchise is going to want to do with Rodgers if he becomes available. If he goes out there and wins another MVP and the Packers front office decides to get rid of him, Green Bay is going to feel a lot bigger than it is because they are going to be pissed. But as a Bears fan, I would love for him to move out of the North or move to Chicago, one of the two. He is one of my favorite players, and it makes me sick. But I don't know if you guys watch the Pat McAfee show. I love his interviews on the Pat McAfee show because they're completely raw. They're not the ESPN gotta make sure everything's tight and everything. He just tells people how it is, and I love that, and it makes me sick that I like him. But like you, I agree. We've had to deal with Favre and Rodgers back to back, but they only have one more Super Bowl in my lifetime than my Bears do. So I'm not that far behind. Now for the Vikings, that's a whole different story.
I don't have any, man. It's only been 60 years, but I think Rodgers too has been sort of perceived as being not a very nice guy and not a really well-liked guy. And I think he's really working on that image of himself, and he's sort of more of almost trying to come across as a carefree, fun-loving guy. Like, I don't think Aaron Rodgers 2 or 3 years ago would have ever hosted Jeopardy, and now he's putting himself out there. I think he's having fun now, and I think he's working on being a little bit more received to the public, and I think he's doing a great job.
Well, I think the big benefit of doing the Pat McAfee show is he's been able to not only explain or be himself, but explain what he means when he's like some of the stuff that he says, right? Like he is a very confident guy, has that bravado about him, but he's had a chip on his shoulder since he fell in the draft, and he's proven every team that passed on him that they were wrong. And I think that now people are starting to understand, and especially me, right? Because I kind of always thought that, but I never really knew Aaron Rodgers because I'm not going out of my way to watch like Packers insider stuff, right? So getting to see him on there has really given me a different viewpoint on him. Yes, Jaws says Rick with the signal caller envy. Yes. Yes. I don't even want to talk about quarterbacks anymore, right? Until we get to the Superflex portion of this. So today we are talking about Dynasty Startup Strategies. The chat is lit right now, and I can't even catch up, but I just want to say thanks to Jaws and Josh and Craig and Randy and Jordan over there on YouTube. And if you guys have any other questions, Sully, are you checking Facebook by chance? We will. Yeah, if you could keep an eye on that, we will cover some questions at the end of this, but we're gonna start rapid firing this. The news took a little bit longer. We got pretty passionate about Darnold and Bridgewater and Rodgers, right? Just talking about a bunch of quarterbacks that are better than any quarterback I've seen in Chicago for the last 80 years. The depression is real. All right, so first we are going to talk 1 QB startup strategies for Dynasty, and I know that I feel like Sully and I are going to be about in the same area on this one, but Scott, when you're going into a 1 QB draft, and I'm assuming, Sully, you intended for this to be snake related, and then we talk about both 1 QB and Superflex in the auction portion just before I get into this?
However you wanted to roll it. I figured we'd go with the snake approach, and then we could address both Superflex and 1 QB, and then just talk auction strategy. But you're the host, man. I just showed up to chat, so however you want to roll.
I'm not the boss on this one anymore, right? So I'm here to make sure. So we're talking snake draft. When you go into that snake draft, do you have a specific plan in place when you start that draft, and then how do you adapt to what happens because obviously we know no plan goes perfectly when you get into a draft because somebody always falls, somebody always goes earlier than you expect them to. What say you?
So I think one thing that you talked about, we're going to touch on this in a little bit, is the difference between one QB and two QB, because that's huge. The Superflex or the two QB league where you can put another quarterback in, that just changes the whole strategy. So there's going to be a different approach for me when it comes to the single QB than it comes to the two QB or the Superflex for sure. I would say that right now, my goal in the first 4 rounds of a startup single QB league is I'm going to go with whatever running back or wide receiver I have the most value in or the highest ranked when it comes to me. And so I might have a plan going, I want to get Tyreek Hill. I'm in the 9th spot. I want to get Devontae Adams or whatever I want to do. But I'll have to be flexible and change based on what is presented. And so what I like to do oftentimes is if there's a run of 6 straight running backs, I love going wide receiver because it's going to get me the better value than if I chase that tail end of that running back. And I mean, if we're talking the first round here, and Alvin, Kamara slips to where I could go him or Devontae Adams, it might, I might be thinking a little bit, but I'm going to go Adams. But I'm talking later, 3rd, 4th round too. There's players by that time who have just they're 5 or 6 spots behind where they normally have been drafted because runs, like you said, different players start going off the board and then people get scared and they go on runs. So I love that. I wait for it. I hope it happens. And then I swoop in and try to pick up that value. And so I don't have a hard and fast, but the first 4 I'm going to do that with, unless, of course, Travis Kelce comes to me in the 2nd round somewhere. Because if you get Travis Kelce in the 2nd round, in the 1st round, at a value at the end of the 1st round, I'm going to pick him, but I'm not going to. He's normally gone in the drafts I've done so far. Kelce's one of the most popular players this year. So, but if I get him in the 2nd round, I'm doing that every time. But most of the time, running back, wide receiver, and then when the quarterbacks for Superflex, it's different. But for the single QB, I'm late round QB guy. I'm not totally JJ Zacharyson, but I'm looking for who's falling. If I can, like last year in one of my leagues, Josh Allen went in the 8th round. I mean, that's perfect, getting Josh Allen in the 8th round. People weren't fighting over quarterbacks. That guy ended up winning the championship that year, by the way. He also drafted Stephon Diggs, son of a gun. So, yeah, I think that's kind of how I approach it. It's value-based, but it's also I'm looking for upside in positions based on how people have been kind of playing in front of me.
Sully, what are you thinking?
I have a multitude of different ways that I approach a 1 QB league, and the thing I do first and foremost is as soon as I know where I'm picking in it, I go mock draft like crazy in the slot that I know that I'm picking in and try tons of different ways of drafting just to see how it shakes out. Traditionally, I like to draft my younger wide receivers that I believe have longevity and most upside in the early rounds. I'm a later running back guy than most, and I don't really want a quarterback until later in the draft. But one of the things I did last year that was somewhat successful is I decided that I wanted one of the big 6 quarterbacks. And as soon as 5 were gone, I was going to take that 6th one. And sometimes it was Russell Wilson. Sometimes it was Dak Prescott. Sometimes it was Kyler Murray. And that was around round 8, round 9. And I found in those rounds, the positional advantage of taking a quarterback versus probably the running back or the wide receiver was there. I could stomach it. Typically, years past, I'd want to wait till rounds 12, 13 to take a quarterback where I can still get a viable starting quarterback in a 1 QB league. But I think that's my new thing is I'm going to wait on the running back. I'm going to try to win this league in 2 to 3 years. I'll get my running backs later, either via trade or through the draft in the following seasons. I'll bulk up on my wide receivers and get myself a viable quarterback. What about you, Rick?
Yeah, I think that's important to note, right? When you get into a draft, and most of the time you probably don't know until you get 3, 4, 5 rounds into it, but is this going to be a team that can win now, or is this something I'm looking to build for future success? Because no matter what, you have to be, the drafts are fluid. You have to be fluid with them, and you have to change depending on what's going. So I think it's very important. Somebody in the chat said you got to know your league, and sometimes you can get that information if you're starting a league with people that you know and you play with. If you're starting a league with people that you don't know, then you probably aren't going to have all that information that you would like to have, and then you're gonna have to move with the flow. But I liked what Scott said about when runs go, not tacking on at the end of that and getting the lower value at that position, but getting the higher value at another position. And zigging when other people zag is normally a way to differentiate yourself and have success in just about anything in life. And it works with drafts too. But I think the one thing that I've learned, right, from running all the RotoHeat leagues is that most of the time, like it's eerily odd how few teams win with these monster fantasy assets. Especially in Dynasty, because you can't just have one. You got to have that team around them. You got to have that depth, right? But 2 years ago, I think 18% of the leagues were won by a team with Christian McCaffrey on it. That same year in the 1 QB leagues, only 1 out of 18 divisions had Lamar Jackson. In Superflex, it was different. He was on a higher percentage of the teams that won. But it takes building a full team, so you got to look for that value, and snatch that up instead of following those trends that the other people in the league are going with there. So,
Rick, can I add something too? I thought about this. If there's trading that's involved, what I love to do, because some leagues, you're not trading, but I love to trade picks before the draft or in the draft. And so I will trade my first round pick to try to pick up a second and a fourth, or a second and a fifth. So I think one of the Dynasty leagues I was in last year, in the first 10 rounds, I had 16 picks or something like that. And that is going to win me or get me more value than, so I had 3 second-round picks, and I had no first-round pick. But those second-round picks were ridiculous. And so I didn't have that, like you said, Christian McCaffrey stud. Didn't have him, But the players I did have were effective for me because there were so many of them. And I got 3 to everybody else's 1 or 2. And so I think that is where, like you said, you can kind of leverage that. And so if there's trading, I'm always trading back, always giving up my picks.
Absolutely. Sully, did you have any more thoughts on that?
No, I was just thinking when you both mentioned the runs that happen, it sure feels good when you start a run, hey? Like when you take a tight end and all of a sudden whoop, they all go crazy, you feel really good about yourself. But yeah, when you're sitting there and you see the run, especially Superflex, if you're trying to squeeze as much juice out of that lemon as you can before you take that quarterback leap and a whole bunch go, it feels terrible. So the only other thing I do is I do rankings, and I try to trust my rankings. So I figure if I'm putting my rankings out there for someone else, I should follow them myself. So a lot of times I'll just simply, when I'm in a tough spot, I'll trust my draft rankings. And I did okay last year. I didn't do great, but
Well, I think the important thing for people to remember is that last year means very little in regards to this year, right? Last year, Michael Thomas was a top 3 Dynasty startup, the number 1 wide receiver. Now I'm seeing drafts where he's going in the 4th round because of one injury-riddled bad season. So, giving yourself more opportunities to hit that stud and, having that depth, the people that come out of nowhere that you don't see, the James Robinsons and, those types of players that you don't see coming, giving yourself a good opportunity to hit on a couple of those is going to help your roster and help your team. But think about this. 2018, Patrick Mahomes was going to be the quarterback 1 every year. The next year, Lamar Jackson's the quarterback 1. He's going to be the quarterback 1 for every year, dominated the position like nobody we've ever seen. Next year, Josh Allen. Like it's just the previous season matters very little. Obviously, all those guys are still good quarterbacks, but when it comes to 1 QB, when you're paying the price that some people are willing to pay for these guys, you don't even know if you're paying for the quarterback 1 or the quarterback 4, and the difference between them and other guys that you can get later in the draft for the value. Take some of these shots on these wide receivers that can go nuts, or the running backs that can get you running back 1 production week after week after week, and wait on those quarterbacks till later, like Scott said. So it is funny that all 3 or the first 2 quarterbacks, like, we were never going to see anybody overtake those two guys. And then the very next season, you've seen it. I went back and looked at the years of Breeze and Manning and Brady, and those guys, I think Breeze was the quarterback one 3 times. And Manning was only the quarterback one like twice, and Brady like twice. But it wasn't, those 3 guys had a big portion of that 15-year stretch, but there were still other guys that like fit into there. So, don't feel like you have to pay a crazy price for one of those top end guys there or at tight end, because tight end's a lot of the same. Now, obviously, Kelsey's a wide receiver playing tight end right now. We may see that, Waller is the same. So it's a little bit different than we've ever seen at the tight end position. But, after you get past those first few guys, like, you can wait on tight end the same you can wait on quarterback. So that'd be a little bit of my thought.
It's a really good point. Really good point about quarterback too, Rick. And I think you and I talked about this before, is when you look at quarterback fantasy points per game and you look at a top 12 quarterback, say quarterback 10, and then go look at like quarterback 18, it's like maybe 1.5 points a game difference on a weekly basis. Like, quarterback is so tight that it's, you're an interception or a long touchdown pass away from being a viable starting fantasy quarterback versus guys that people are talking about as trash. So interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've noticed a huge discrepancy in the amount of fantasy points that quarterbacks score, and then where people rank them just in if that guy's a good quarterback or not. So you think about, Blaine Gabbert, or not Blaine Gabbert. My mind just is
Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, the quarterback for the Jags, who's terrible, but he
Minshew?
threw like
Minshew?
No, it was like 4 years ago when he was throwing Allen Robinson. My brain just
Blake Bortles.
Yes,
Blake Bortles. There you go. It was a B.
Hey,
Blake
I've
Bortles
had like
was
8
the
brain
same
farts
quarterback.
today, so I've had about as many of those as Bortles could throw interceptions in a 4-game stretch, right?
Right. Like there's guys like that who like they suck at quarterback, but then you look at their fantasy points per game and they don't suck as much. And so if you can find those guys in those later rounds, particularly mobile quarterbacks, right? Quarterbacks who have the ability to score and get you points on the ground, whether it's picking up yards or running in for touchdowns, I like looking for those guys. The Josh Allens of last year. So who's this year, who can be a mobile quarterback? Trevor Lawrence, other players that might be able to pick up some extra yards for you and give you some more running points, some more, touchdowns that you wouldn't get normally from a quarterback a la Aaron Rodgers, not running it in during the playoffs. All right, I'm done. I have to
No, but to piggyback off of that, right? Trubisky was a startable quarterback in 1 QB, even though he was a terrible NFL QB. He could get you 17 points a week. Cam Newton's does not throw the ball very well, but he could get you 3 touchdowns on the ground in 1 week. And those guys do have value there, and I would rather spend on those guys, those types. Now, obviously, in Dynasty, you kind of want to have somebody that you're comfortable is going to be a starter in the league for multiple years, just so you don't have to worry about it. But you can always get those types of guys cheap, the Ryan Fitzpatricks and those types of guys that can score you fantasy points, but they're not going to be winning you NFL games if you own a team in the NFL, right? So I definitely agree with you in regards to that. So let's talk middle rounds, right? Because I think that is a spot where a lot of people have issues with figuring out what to do. Because you get into that, there's a lot of guys with upside. There's a lot of older veterans that you feel have a decent floor. But how are you determining, Sully, which direction you're going to go when you've got, that tier and you've got the younger player and you've got the older player? How are you determining which route you're going to go there in the middle rounds?
Obviously, it's draft dependent, but one of the things that I like to do in the middle rounds is that's when I sort of kind of take my look at the running back market and see what's out there, because I've been heavy in other areas other than that prior to that in the draft. But it's also where I really like to target previous year's rookies. So that's where I'm looking for guys right now like Henry Ruggs and Jalen Reagor and maybe even Bryan Edwards and guys like that even though we play in Dynasty, it's incredible how fast people want to punt away these guys that just didn't produce in their rookie season. So I like guys like that in those middle rounds or middle to later rounds. But also, I just like rounding out my roster. Just keep picking the best guy I think is available on the board at the time. and I'll worry about what my starting lineup in week 1 is in week 1.
I like what Sully was saying. I use the middle rounds to identify breakout wide receivers. And so one thing I've started doing, and I wrote about it last year, is I developed a theory called WR2 Theory. And it's not a theory about the wide receivers necessarily. It's a theory about human behavior. And what it says is that we as fantasy football, fans, analysts, whatever, we overvalue wide receiver ones, we undervalue wide receiver 2. So last year, if you looked at Juju Smith-Schuster and his ADP, Deontay Johnson and his ADP, I went Deontay Johnson. Now, they finished within 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 points of each other. But if you went 4th round with Juju and I went 9th round with Deontay, I got better value. That was a better pick for me. So that's what I do. I wrote, like a big long column about it last year on nimblwnumbers.com. I'm going to do another revamp this year, pick new players. Last year, players I picked for this column were Justin Jefferson, Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson, all players that were not the number 1 on their team, but they had the opportunity, or they had the physical ability, the gifting to kind of close that gap. And in Justin Jefferson's case, he crushed that gap. He was the number 1 wide receiver on the team by the end. So I like to do that. I like to look, and players like Laviska Shenault, other second round or second year players are depth, Jerry Jeudy. They're in that category of potential breakout. So we're kind of marrying the two ideas here with Sully's looking for those guys that maybe have depressed value. I'm there as well. I'm looking for where is that gap and where's that value needing to be hedged.
I think we want to make something real clear, just so everybody knows. Scott doesn't ignore all the wide receiver ones on teams. He's just
right.
he's talking about later in the draft and getting the value for those guys where like for example, Sully in those rounds is looking at running back. That can give some value to Scott with his theory. And something else that I want to make very clear, right? Scott, I know you're newer to the RotoHeat family, but I've been telling these guys for 2 years that if we knew half of the shit that we thought we knew, we'd be doing pretty well. And one thing for certain is that there is not one way to get to the correct answer being your championship, right? There are many different avenues of getting to that point. You don't have to do one thing every single draft. Last year, I'm going in doing my 20th, 23rd leagues. I'm starting to do some different stuff. I'm starting to look at my teams and I'm going, man, I have this guy on like 80% of my teams and all my teams kind of look a lot alike. I want to do something completely different. So don't be afraid to do that either. But there is not one right answer to get to that. We all have our ways that we do stuff, and we're probably pretty passionate about them and we feel pretty confident in them, or else we wouldn't, it'd be irresponsible for us to be here on this stream right now if we didn't. but yeah, just know, what I've always told people is get as much information as you can, right? If you're on RotoHeat, if you're on Nimblw with numbers, if you're DLF or wherever you're at, get all that information and figure out how that fits into the way you play and create your own way of playing fantasy. Because if you're just listening to us talking heads on your screen and doing what we say to do, you're not gonna have very much fun, right? You're just gonna every time you have a decision, you're gonna come in and you're gonna be like, hey, what should I do? And then if it fails, you're gonna be like, why'd you guys tell me to do all this? And
Totally.
We're gonna be like, well, we also told you to make your own damn decisions and get that information. But the goal is to help everybody get better at all of this. So I think that's a great 1 QB discussion. Let's get on to Superflex, because it is a little bit different. I think when we're talking, I don't think we need to go back into the middle rounds and all that. You're going to have that same type of theory in there. But are you, Scott, are you a guy that's attacking quarterback super early in the draft, the first, second round? Or are you somebody that's maybe going back to back in the 3rd and 4th round?
I think it is all dependent on who's available and where you're at. So last year in a lot of these Superflex leagues that were startups that I was in, I would get Josh Allen in the 2nd round, or I would get Dak Prescott. The first couple quarterbacks going normally were, I think it was Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. Those were the 1, 2, 3 last year in most of the Dynasty startups I was in. So I kind of lingered and waited and got Josh Allen a little bit later, got Dak Prescott, and I went all in with those. And then what I tried to do is I tried to wait as long as I could. And I think Sully touched on it. He said that, when he's drafting in the single quarterback league, he's got that group of 6 that he doesn't want to, vary from. And once the 5th guy goes, he's like, I'm going to get this guy. I had 2 or 3 people last year. Tannehill was one. Kirk Cousins was another that I was like, these are the 2 guys I want to get as my second QB in a lot of these leagues. And I looked at the players they had around them. Their defenses were not great. They also had offensive weapons. When you look at, Justin Jefferson was just coming in, but, Thielen, Cook, you have Irv Smith there. I knew they were going to throw the ball. I knew that Kirk Cousins would be serviceable. I didn't think he'd be as good as he was. And same with Tannehill. I thought thought he could do well because he had kind of come back from last year, been the player, comeback player. He did end up catching or syncing up with A.J. Brown all season. And so it was great for me. I didn't win every league I was in, but I did well. I won a couple. And I'm in a position where this year I've got Josh Allen and I'm rolling back with Kirk Cousins. I don't need to worry about the draft. I can get another quarterback. I think I have Jameis or Taysom on most of those teams too. So I was playing the long game with some of these quarterback positions, and that's what you can do too. If there's uncertainty around a quarterback situation, like the Saints, both those quarterbacks are going to drop because of that. And so I got one or the other of both of those last year, knowing that Drew Brees is going to retire. So look ahead too and kind of get your 3rd or 4th QBs that have a potential to jump in like Jameis this year. And I might have 3 starting QBs on my Superflex team, which is great. Which means on bye weeks, I'm going to kick your ass. So that's what you should do.
Speaking on that, Love might be one. We talked about Aaron Rodgers at the beginning of the show. He might be a guy that goes late in your dynasty drafts that might be in line for a starting job next year. They've obviously invested a lot in him. But Sully, how are you treating that quarterback position?
Well, on the topic of Love, Craig will always tell you that Love always wins. So maybe you should stick with that theory. Superflex, I'm a quarterback hungry guy. I really want both my starters by the end of round 4, typically. And I'm looking for the Kirk Cousins kind of, and maybe not quite Kirk Cousins, but more of the Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewaters as my 3rd guy that I can plug him. And maybe a Sam Darnold is that kind of guy now as well. And I'm fully aware that I'm going to take a hit at other positions, but I've been in too many Superflex leagues without a viable quarterback duo or even very good quarterbacks at all. And that's not a lot of fun for me. So I can use those quarterbacks that I have on my roster as assets to try to help me in other areas later. So I will typically be pretty aggressive early out of the gate in Superflex leagues. What about you, Rick?
I pretty much agree with what you guys are saying. I myself, one thing that I try to do is I try to stay away from overpaying for those young quarterbacks in Superflex, right? Because we see this all the time. How many number 1 overall picks have been a quarterback, and how many of those have turned into the superstar that you're trying to get at that spot in the draft? Look at where Baker went a couple years ago. Now, Kyler's going into his 3rd year. I feel a little bit more comfortable with him because he didn't have that huge fall off in year 2. But we're talking about like these Zach Wilsons this year, and Fields and even Lawrence, going in the 1st round. We've seen so many quarterbacks that have come in, and a lot of them end up being good quarterbacks, but they're not so much better than the rest of the field, as we talked with them being so close, that I want to pay that 1st rounder for them, right? So unless I can get the Mahomes or the Allen or somebody like that in the 1st round, I'm more likely to wait and then maybe go running back, wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, and then get some of those older veterans that I feel a little more comfortable. But I'd rather pay that price for Baker Mayfield now than the people that were taking him in the high 2nd, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Time moves fast. So just a little bit of that is just trying to figure out where you can get that value, because especially for these young guys, we don't know how that career arc is going to go, right? At one point, everybody thought Drew Brees was done and his career was over, and then he gets traded, goes to New Orleans, and ends up being a fantasy asset for damn near 20 years or however long he was there. So it's one thing that can definitely help you at the quarterback position, because it's highly variant. But even though it's highly variant, the difference between the top guys and when I say top, I mean like typically even the number 2 guy, right? Like Lamar and Mahomes were well ahead in those 2 years of everybody else, but then everybody else was bunched together. So it's it's definitely a hard thing to do. You want to have them starters in Superflex, but you also want to make sure that it doesn't cost you depth and value at the wide receiver and running back positions, or tight end if you have a tight end premium league. So that's what I would say there. Now, the juice of this episode is auctions, because I don't know about you, Scott, but once I went from snake drafts to auction, I will not go back. I never want to snake draft again. Not that I won't, because I'm a degenerate, and if somebody has the right league, I might join it. But if I have the option, it is going to be an auction draft every single time. So what are your thoughts? Are you in auction drafts? Do you love auctions as much as I do, or?
So I'll tell you honestly, I've only done one, and I am newer to auctions. I am very intrigued, but I have not been invited. So if somebody out there does potentially want to invite me to an auction league, I have so many regular dynasty leagues that are snake or third round reversals. I'm ready to vomit, just like you, And so I think I am new and not ready to crush it, but I'm ready to learn, and I'm ready to kind of understand. I did some watching last year before I jumped in and saw a little bit of the strategies. The strategy that I used last year was that I went for the mid-round players. I did not try to overspend. I tried to get as many cheaper pieces to start as I could, and I ended up being okay. I got a couple of Jamison Crowder, players like that were cheaper. I still don't know, though, because my team did not have enough studs. It just didn't to be successful, and I was 500. So I'm here to learn about how to be a successful auction building machine. So I'm here to learn from you guys.
This is what I'll say, is that every time you think you got a good buy, it ends up being a bad one. So, for example, last year, for one, Scott, I start up like 4 or 5 leagues every year, even though I say I'm not going to. Just to give you a little bit of background, that's kind of how RotoHeat all started, right? I started a 96-team league, and we filled that in less than 24 hours, and then I started a second one, and then ended up having a third one that off season. So we started 3 96-team leagues that year, all of them still running, and kind of built this community from there. But last year in a startup, I got like Gurley, Carson, Connor, and somebody else. Fournette for like 7% of my budget, and I thought that was going to be the greatest thing ever. And guess how many points those guys scored for me on a weekly basis? Not enough.
7?
Not enough. So you think you get these values, and you think you spent your money wisely. A couple of years ago, I spent 55% of my budget on DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham Jr. So we know how that went. So I'm a lot riskier than most people. I tell everybody that. Backgrounds in poker, so I'm gonna gamble a little bit, right? I'm gonna take my shots. I'm gonna build my teams a little bit differently so I can have some fun with it. But I think the most important thing is that you know, and this goes for any draft, right? For one, get your rankings together and make sure that you trust yourself, like Sully said earlier, and you stick to that. So when it comes to auctions, if you say, I'm going to budget this amount, I'm willing to spend this amount on wide receivers, whatever position, or I'm willing to spend this much on this player, stick to that. Unless you get value somewhere else, right? If you say, okay, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on Kyler Murray, and then you get him for, let's just say you have $1,000 budget and you get them for $45 less than you thought. Now you can allocate that to some other players to get them. But the one thing you should always do is stick to your plan, because it's easy to get out of hand real quick, especially depending on the auction that you're in. Like we do ours are slow. And at times we have 24 to 40 players on the board at any given time, and you never know who they're going to be. So next thing you know, you've got 12 players on the board that you love, and you're like trying to figure out how to do. Next thing you know, you spent all your budget and you're getting dollar players for the last half of your roster. So you got to make sure you stick to that. That's really literally like the only advice when it comes to auctions. You already have your rankings together, right? That you would use for snakes. Now you just got to figure out how much money you're willing to allocate to those positions, and then just stick to it, because that auction, it can be annoying when you've been the bid leader on somebody for 11 and a half hours, and within 30 minutes of it closing, somebody bids it and starts it over. It can get real frustrating. You can't go on auction tilt. You just got to stick to it. That would be my advice when it comes to an auction. Sully, what are you thinking there on auctions?
I have 3 things I try to do in an auction. Number 1, there's 4. I lied. The first one is I try to be the last person to acquire a player and the first guy to fill my roster in every auction that I'm in. And that's a DLF Ryan McDowell sort of trick that I thought I might as well give this a try, and I love it. It works great for me. So that's what I like. To your point, Rick, have a budget on what you're going to spend on a guy and don't go over it like I do, because what happens to me is I'm a competitor. And if, Scott, you and I are both going back and forth on a player, I'll spend my whole damn budget on that player just to get him if I have to. And then I'll feel good about myself for about 10 seconds. And then I'll hate myself with the dollar players for the rest of the draft. But why I really like auctions and why I really prefer auctions, that point you made earlier about if Alvin Kamara slides and Devontae Adams is there, who do you pick? In auction, you can get them both, right? Like you can go and get both your guys. You're just going to have to fill it in other ways. And a couple of years ago, Rick started up a 96-team Superflex tight end premium auction draft. And I went all in and I got Andrew Luck, and I was the happiest guy in the world. And then he didn't quite play football anymore. So that was a large percentage of my budget gone. So things can happen in auction, but they're totally unpredictable. And every auction I'm in, the same thing happens all the time is, how the hell did player this go for that? Right? So there's always a guy that slips through the cracks. It's crazy, right? But they're super fun. Target the guys you want, set a budget, and darn it, stick to your budget. But they're a blast. Once you do a couple, and like I did really poorly in the first few because I didn't know what I was doing. But I did okay in my last couple because you get a little bit more comfortable with, especially if there's proxy bids and all the other stuff and the strategic aspects of it, and when to bid guys up and when not to. And the other thing is always nominate guys you don't want in the first round, maybe even in the second round. Get the dollars flushed and get them going. But auctions are a frickin' blast, and snakes should be illegal and auctions should be mandated. Is the only way to draft in fantasy football, in my opinion.
One other thing that I wanted to make sure to mention before we end this show, every year's different, right? I can tell you this, 3 years ago, I very rarely would have taken a running back in the first round or two in a fantasy draft. We've seen an influx of running backs over the last couple of years. We've also seen the fact that there's very few bell cow backs now that you can count on a week-to-week basis. So be willing to look at that player pool and watch your ADPs, right? Like just watching the Front Yard Fantasy guys over there do their mock draft on Monday. I think the first 8 picks were running backs, right? So, it's entirely different year to year. Even last year, we saw guys, going, Thomas going up there at the first 4 picks and stuff like that. So you got to really watch what's going on in the community and how the community is valuing different guys. So, speaking of them, we have a
They're all over us.
We have a legend in the house here, John Luke, JL, over there on YouTube. What a great guy! That
Josh
I'll
is in
tell you
here
this,
as well.
That those guys over there are some great guys, and their content is fire. It's so fun to watch on a daily basis. So make sure you're subscribed to them. I'm gonna let Scott pump his stuff a little bit more here in a minute. But you know, there's so much great content out there, and you know, the people that have been watching RotoHeat for the last couple of years know that we've always been happy to you know, share the spotlight per se. We know we're not the only ones out there, and we love working with other people in the industry. So for one, thanks for coming on, Scott. And then, you know, thanks to everybody in the chat. We did have a couple questions, and I don't know if you've seen anything over there on the old Facebook, but Randy Page says, $300 Dynasty. I got offered DJ Moore for Mixon and a second rounder. Swap my third. Am I nuts for not pulling the trigger? I have Dobbins and Gibson at running back. So it's DJ Moore for his Mixon and a second round swap for his third round. I think, is this making sense to you guys?
Hurts my head, but I think I know what you mean.
So
DJ Moore in a third for Mixon in a second? Is that what it is?
Mixon in a second?
It sounds like Mixon in a second for DJ in a third. So he gets DJ in a third for his Mixon in a second.
I think I like the Mixon in the second side of that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, especially when they're talking about Giovanni Bernard maybe being traded. I mean, if that happens, you know, I don't know if it will. He's only 75, guys. I mean, he's younger than Frank Gore, so I mean, no, he's only 29. That's the joke.
I still think. And
is Mixon really that old?
No, I'm talking about.
Oh. I was
saying he's like a million years old. He's
like,
only 29 though. He's not that.
I was like, okay, somebody fire me again, because I did not know Mixon was 29.
No.
I got you.
I just think there's so much of upside with Joe Mixon, and the second rounder, especially this year, I think it's potentially a player that is viable for you. I don't think this draft is a home run that everybody thinks it is, because none of them are, but I think that trade is. I like both sides. You know, Darnold could be wonders for DJ as well. So
I mean, I'm probably going the DJ Moore side here, and I love Mixon, and I've said Mixon's got as much talent at running back as just about anybody in the NFL. It's whether the Bengals use him correctly, have an offensive line, and now we kind of have those concerns of whether he can stay healthy. But knowing that even if Mixon has a great year this year, he's getting to that part of his career where we don't know how much longer, right? And it's the same thing with, you know, some other running backs that we're looking at now. You know, for those that haven't read it, I wrote an article on CMC last year called The Curse of 400 in regards to 400 touches and how running backs come back from that. It obviously played out in last season to my favor, but, you know, we don't know how that'll happen, right? LT, we saw bounce back, but Derrick Henry was 2 touches, I believe, away from that 400 touch mark. So I didn't write the article on it because I knew people would be like, well, he didn't have 400, but it's so close.
They would.
It's so close that it's something to look into in regards to him. But anyways, I think DJ Moore really has the ceiling of the wide receiver 1 overall, and not that I'm certain he'll get there, but I'll take that chance in that trade, knowing that we've probably only got 1 to 2 years out of Mixon where we're comfortable starting him.
That's fair.
And that'd be that. But
DJ Moore just needs touchdowns, right? That's all he needs.
Yeah,
he gets yards and catches every year. He just doesn't score, so maybe he does now. So to your point, that's a good point. I also hear that fantasy or trades make fantasy fun or something like that too, right? So,
yeah, but I don't.
People,
you know, I don't disagree, but I know the guy that started that movement, and it makes me nervous to like. We don't want to tie ourselves too close to that guy, right?
Loosely.
Okay, I just
Do we speak his name, or do we never speak that
it's
guy's
Jeff.
name? Ah,
I'll have you know that he's in our Facebook chat and our YouTube chat. He's like our #1 fan
That's
right
the
now.
first
So
time
you might
he's
as well shout him out.
he's been in our Facebook group for like a year and a half, and that's probably the first time he's ever talked in it.
I didn't even know he was in there.
I didn't know until I was on their show, and he said, I knew your name looked familiar when I'd be chatting with them on their show, and when I was on their show, he's like, now I know where I know you from. I'm in your group, and I'm like,
That's
you
hilarious.
could have said hi, bro.
Right. Come on,
He
man.
just responded, and he said that guy sucks. No,
Golf
actually,
shirts, good
Jeff-
golf shirts on that cat.
Jeff, I really do want updates on Anna, just so you know. And 2, where's Simon at? Because we need his mom around here because she likes Sully.
She likes me.
Gotta get that Sully love.
Okay, right. We are an hour and 10 minutes in. If anybody else has any questions, let's get those in the chat. Did we have any on Facebook? I'm gonna make sure I didn't miss any here.
No, we just have Jeff over on Facebook. Somebody commented should have got Chenault, and I apologize. I don't know what that refers to. But LaVisca's a good ad, so I will just go ahead and agree. Yeah, that's about it. Jaws has a question in the YouTube. Did you want to go over that one real quick?
2.2, too early for Fields or Wilson? ? Is that the one you're talking about, or does he have another one that we need to get to?
Yeah, and it's a 1 QB league.
Oh, so you're
Ooh.
talking the 202 and a rookie draft. Is that too early for Fields or Wilson? I personally think it is. I personally do. I look at these wide receivers, right? Over on rookiedraftguide.com, we have covered 40 rookie wide receivers. And there are not very many that I'm like, I won't touch, right? This draft is so deep at the positions that I don't really want to lose that value in a 1 QB. I would rather take shots a little bit later. I would rather take a shot a little bit later on Mac Jones, maybe in the 3rd or 4th, depending on where these guys fall, or just get some of them, get Tua, because people are going to be down on Tua, and I think you could get him for even cheaper than those guys in 1 QB, and he's still got the upside, right? This is the guy that was supposed to be the #1 pick up until he got injured and Burrows went ballistic. So that's where I would personally be. What do you think about that, Scott?
No, I like what you're thinking there. It's risk averse. I mean, ultimately, you want to be creating the most sound team. You know what I mean? You want to be able to look at your team and go, I've got confidence in it. So I like your strategies.
I agree with both of you. I think I have Lawrence in around that space in 1 QB. I think around 2.2, 2.3, and I know that I probably won't get him anywhere because of that, and I'm comfortable with that. That's about a half a round too early for those quarterbacks in 1 QB, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Last count, Rick, 107 guys we've watched film on for rookiedraftguide.com.
Wow. I'm actually on the site right now. It's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
That's that guy.
Create an account and I'll give you access so you can see all the stuff we've got going on that's locked up. So just send me your username and I'll go ahead and give you access to that.
Oh, I love that. That'd be awesome. You guys are awesome.
And when are we starting the auction draft that Scott's joining?
I mean, seriously, I know.
We'll get that together for sure. Because I've been wanting to do some, and I know I think JL and those guys said that they might be interested in one too. And I've wanted to get more ingrained with the industry, right? Because it's something that I've been very bad with over the first couple years. Haven't networked much because, as I said pre-show, I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. In the off season, I do a little bit better. Once the season gets here, I'm just swamped and too busy. But I think it would be fun to get some people from different sites and get to know everybody a little bit more. Here's a question: are you going to Canton?
You know, right now, because of London's situation, I'm not. But I might just wing it and just go. You know what I mean? And just be like, F it, I'm just gonna go. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to endanger my daughter at all. But I'm not planning on going. But I'm vaccinated. My wife's vaccinated. If in August. There's a threshold of vaccination, and it seems like we're turning a corner. I'll be more comfortable. I haven't booked anything, but man, I just feel so left out. Like watching everybody like, oh, we're going. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I want to go so bad. And my partner, Mike Collins, who does the Fantasy Millionaires with me, he said next year we're going to go no matter what, like next year for sure. So I'm hoping that I can sneak in, but I don't know if my wife's going to let me, honestly. I do love my wife. I listen to her, even though people on Twitter do not think I do.
I use the closure of the Canadian-U.S. border as my excuse, but the truth is the same.
Yeah.
I want him, got to make sure the wife's on board.
Yeah, the wives are important.
She might come with me if you guys are cool.
Look at that sound advice from Scott for this episode. For all of you out there, wives are important. Don't get yourself murdered over fantasy football. It's just not worth it.
No, I got to tell you a quick story about JL because you mentioned him a couple times. I actually, when I was a substitute teacher about 20 years ago, however long it was when I was first teaching, my first year in education, I taught his now girlfriend in 3rd grade at a school here in Maryland. So we didn't know that. That was 18 years ago, however long it was. I went on their podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, and we just started kind of talking. And he's like, oh, yeah, my girlfriend went to this school. And I was like, I taught there. And he's like, oh, cool. And then after the show, he's like, hey, did you come in and this year and do this and have this? I said, yes. He goes, oh, my gosh, you and Maria's teacher in 3rd grade. I was like, oh, this is the tiniest world ever. So I love JL, and his girlfriend is an amazing person too. So shout out all those guys over there and their girlfriends,
they're awesome.
Wives.
I watched that episode because I try to watch it every day. It is truly my favorite hour every day. I take my lunch and watch the show. And I saw the episode that you were on. You did a great job there, as well as you're doing a great job here. And then later on Twitter, I saw that tweet, and I think I saw JL retweet your tweet. And I'm like, holy crap, what a cool story. So. Yeah. It's funny how it doesn't matter to me if it's fantasy football or my day-to-day business life. It all comes to relationships. And one of the things that I think Rick has sort of spearheaded for RotoHeat is Rick kind of introduced us to the Front Yard guys, and they took us in with open arms, and now it's just kind of blossomed, right? We get to chat with you. We have Steffi Smalls coming on in a couple of weeks. We'll have a few other great people coming in here, and it's all because of stepping outside our box and looking at all the great talent in this industry and welcoming them in. We're so much stronger as a unit than we are as individuals. This is a lot of fun, more than anything else. So I appreciate you coming in, and I appreciate Rick and JL and all the Front Yard guys as well. So it's been a hell of a good couple of months here.
Here's the thing, right? So my background is in promotions, and I've done events, and I've worked with bands. I've had a concert venue. And one thing that I learned is, even when it goes down to music, bands don't make it on their own, right? You have to network with the other bands around you. You have to bring fans that watch the band that's opening for you, or vice versa. And then their fans watch you, and then you build that pool, right? This is how the whole Seattle grunge thing built out of, them bands just building each other up there in Seattle. And it's the same thing in the industry. And we tried doing this when we first came on the scene, but nobody knew who we were, especially since we haven't been the most active Twitter community. We've got our Facebook community and YouTube community. But it was a lot harder when we were a younger company, because people didn't know who we were. And a lot of people don't want, your brand is at risk whenever you have somebody join. Sully will tell you that from some of his recruitments that he's brought on to the RotoHeat team.
Hope I'm not sinking your ship tonight, boys.
No, we're talking about actual people coming on to write at RotoHeat that turned into be like neo-Nazis that we had no idea about. And then it's like immediate loot.
You recruit one Nazi, and it sticks with you for life. Jeez. Oh my gosh, I forgot, Scott. Happy belated birthday, man.
Yes, it was.
You. Yes, I'm 42 yesterday, and I said to somebody, I look younger and I feel older. So I must be doing something wrong or right or something. I don't know.
I have no idea the last time I was the youngest guy on a live stream.
Congratulations. You are every
You
time
guys-
you come on with me.
You guys make me feel young.
I need to do a senior citizens fantasy hour for that to happen.
There's some old heads. You could get them.
Yeah.
I'm 36, so like
I'll have to dial
that's
them
part
up.
of the reason why I like the front yard fantasy guys, right? They make me feel young. I was telling them that when we were on the stream. I'm like, man, you guys remind me of when I was in my early mid 20s and didn't have a care in the world, and now I'm old. When I stand up from this chair, my knees are gonna pop, and I just had to buy a new office chair because my back was locked up every day, and to be young again. JL says you recruit one Nazi. He said that got him.
Put that on it. Tell Simon to put that on a t-shirt.
Oh jeez. Oh geez, Sully, when you come down from the Canadas, blame Canada. Let's not wear that any Nazi paraphernalia to Canton, all right?
No, I want to be 100% transparent. I did not recruit a Nazi because I'm aligned with the Nazis. It was sheep in wolves clothing, or whatever the saying is. The guy was totally cool. He came on board. 36 hours later, he just went a little bit off the
And
rails.
then I was, oh man, the names that he called me for booting him and getting him out of there and cutting all ties was a fun thing. JL, by the way, I don't even have all my gear yet. I have the new lights up, but the camera hasn't got here yet, and I'm a dumbass, and I only ordered the body of the camera, and I didn't order any batteries. So I'm supposed to have all that stuff in by Thursday, but I do have the new mic arm that you recommended. I appreciate that. This guy, right? I asked him about his boom stand for his mic, and I go on Amazon, and the next thing I know, I'm ordering a mic stand. I'm ordering a stream deck and new lighting and a camera and a new lens, and $2,000 later, I'm going, oh shit, man, I was supposed to spend like $140 on a mic stand and be done with it. But I'll tell you what, these guys, like we've said and we've reiterated, it's so fun to get to know you, Scott, and I don't get to talk on Clubhouse very often because I'm always working, and if I get into talking, then I'll never get anything done, because as you can see, we're an hour and a half in here, and I could go for another hour and a half, but I'm in there lurking. I'm getting to know people from that sense, but I'm just the weirdo and standing in the corner at the party, like just eavesdropping in on everybody's conversation. But JL does a great job with that in getting chats together, and
Huge.
I've learned so much, and I want you to know that if there's ever anything that you could use help with, whether on the marketing side or anything like that, I'm always down to answer any questions or give any advice I have on that side of the business, because it is a tough part, and it is a grind, and it can be tedious, and it can be easy to let up on all that stuff. But if I can help in any way, I'm not the guy that's going, oh no, I don't want you to get any views, because if you get views, then I can't. Like, it's not that type of deal. So
That's so silly.
Well, I appreciate that, because just so you guys know, my background is not in media. I teach, now you guys can tell I like talking, and I'm able to converse, which is my gift. So it works out well, but I don't know anything about any of this stuff, honestly. And that's the truth, is I'm brand new and I'm just here to learn. So, Rick, Sully, I definitely think behind the scenes we'll be connecting more. And I love your philosophy, because that's my philosophy too, is that the more people I can meet and relate to and learn from and build into me, we're all standing on other people's shoulders. I mean, 200 years ago, we didn't have electricity. Come on, folks. We're just rapidly progressing. Mm-hmm. And I think what you guys said is key. If we're doing it together, those bands, the fantasy crew, whatever it is, we're going to be more successful, because we're part of a team and we're not all by ourselves out there to get kind of crushed by the world. So
I think it's personally, this is a little, and if Brad is out there somewhere watching, he'll enjoy this, is we go on live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, and we get in trouble if we go a little bit over an hour, and then we put the boss on here to host, and we're like, what, an hour and a half, and still we could probably go for 2 more.
So
I
I can
love
tell
it.
you,
It's
I
just
can
so
tell
much
you
fun
this,
for me.
right? My whole plan was to start up a show that's like it's either right before or right after the front yard fantasy guys get done in the late afternoon, early evening. And my goal was to do a show where it's 15 minutes. And then I said, I'll never be able to do that. I like to talk
Well,
too much.
that's my podcast, right? Like I took JJ Zacharyason's late round podcast as my model, 25, 30 minutes solo podcast. And that's what I try to do. And now I find mine are 35 and 40 minutes and it's just me.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
It's tough. I do, JL. I appreciate the kind words over there. He said that I've helped them a ton, and it's you know what? It's for one, I've always believed that none of us are any smarter than the next. Like we all have the capabilities to learn or to do different things, right? And if you can be helped by something that I have to offer or that Sully has to offer. Like I'm learning from these guys as much that are on the team in different areas and there's something we can all learn from each other. And if we pass that knowledge, we can all get better at what we do and we can all have success in that. And I hope that I can help some people not only win their fantasy leagues, but also help other people that love doing what we do. Be able to continue to do that, because if you're not enjoying it, it's easy to get burnt out. And we spend a lot of time doing this, so I do appreciate all that. And again, I appreciate you coming on. It was great to meet you. I'm very happy for the update on London and that she's doing well.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I'll continue watching on that. And if there's ever anything, if you guys are ever raising any money or anything, let me know. That's also been something that I've been big in the past, is helping raise money. And I had a sister that passed away at 3 months old. So when it comes to kids stuff, like I'm real passionate about that. So always let me know in regards to that. And maybe we can do some sort of charity driven. We talked about doing it last year, and I've talked to the guys at Front Yard Fantasy about maybe teaming up to do something. So maybe we can do something to raise some money for some kids and that fun stuff. So
Love it.
if I want you to tell everybody again where you're from, what you do, and why they should be following you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you for your care for London. That means a lot to me, just as a dad, and who's fighting that fight as a dad every day to care for their kids. And it's hard. Being a parent's really hard, by the way. I know no one's ever heard that before. It's probably breaking news, but man, geez Louise, being parent's hard. So I appreciate all the prayers, encouragement. I am active on Twitter. So, for me, I love getting on Twitter every single day. And right now, since I'm not working, I have more time to be on it. So I'm in the opposite of Rick, who's like crushing it with his work. I'm not working. So I'm all over Twitter all the time. You can find me at NimblWNumbers. And then I'm not writing anything for NimblWNumbers.com right now, but during the fall season, when we get into DFS, we go heavy bone with it, as we say. We go after DFS. Last year, I won 5K. My man, Bo McBigtime, was 89% in head-to-heads. A lot of those were against me, but I'm not going to, no, he did. He won a lot of money in head-to-heads. And so, my goal over at NimblWNumbers.com is to build a DFS tool that you guys can use. So last year I had a DraftKings tool that had all the points that were every player. It was sortable. You could, look at it each week. You could look at it by trends. We're going to continue working this year to give people the content that they can use to help them win money. And then I do podcasts every week. I do 3 of them. I do one on Monday. It's called The Fantasy Millionaires, and it's with Mike Collins, who is at the Ralph Macho on Twitter, and we just talk about anything and everything. So yesterday we talked about Paul Pierce, we talked about Deshaun Watson, we talked about cryptocurrency, and I mean just kind of the fun stuff. When we get into fantasy, we go through the fantasy schedule pretty hard when we're in the off season, so we're having kind of a little bit of fun right now. And then my show with Bo is on Friday nights at 11, and it's called Chalk Blocked, and it is DFS primarily, but we talk all things fantasy football. So there's kind of the fantasy genre, drafts, players coming up. We're talking about free agent signing, all those things. We did have Jordan on last week, actually. Jordan came on our show last week, and I think we got Chris Robin coming on later in I think April 16th. So a lot of fun stuff there. And then on Thursday nights at 8, I do a podcast with Matt McCoy, We have Matt Harmon coming on, but Matt McCoy called the Fantasy Football Hot Stove. This week we got JJ Zacharyson, 8 o'clock on Thursday, and then the following week we have Matt Harmon. So please do check us out. And then, if anybody does want to reach out to me or talk to me, my DMs aren't open for everybody, but shoot me a DM. And I love hearing stories. And, Rick, thank you for sharing about your experiences with your own situation with cancer. And then, the situation that you've gone through. It really does bring us all together when people can relate to each other and jump in DMs and just kind of share what they're going through. So many people have done that and shared stories. And I've grown in my relationships as other people have given me what they've gone through, and I'm able to share what I've gone through, and it's just really helpful. So please, anybody going through what I'm going through, reach out. I'll be glad to talk to you and kind of share what I've learned. And I don't know everything about cancer or how to deal with it. I'm still in the fight, but I've learned a lot about how to love others and how to do this. And so I'm excited to build with you guys and with everybody else in the community. So please do check me out and let me know what's going on with you. So.
Awesome. And I agree, right? It's another situation where there's not one right answer to get to get to the end point. It's a learning thing, and everybody's gonna handle that a little bit different. But we appreciate you being on. I want to say JL says London is 101, and I think that's unanimous. I think it's a consensus, no-brainer. London 101, and then Josh says that you are the man, Scott. And then JL goes back and says you have a fantastic show, so I want everybody to find that. I want you to message me all that info. I'm gonna put it in the show notes in the description of the video. And then and JL says JL is coming on. So
you got JL on, dude.
And
that's awesome.
Anytime, I want to do some stuff, especially in regards to DFS together. So we'll have to do some more and do some more shows and get to know each other even a little bit better. Auction drafts, everything.
And all, yeah, man.
This is great.
Great. I appreciate it, and I would definitely want to do that. Especially if we can get JL and do a little, I got some guys. I got Bo on my side. I got Mike, not on my side, but, I got a little crew. And so we can do a little crew league. That'd be cool.
That'd be fun.
I'd like to take JL's money. That would be enjoyable.
He is the villain,
I don't know if
right?
he has any. He's like 26. He doesn't have any money.
Ever since he beat me,
I had more money when I was 26 than I do now.
I have none.
They didn't let me win on their game show, so I will not let them win in a fantasy league.
Nope, it's cutthroat, man.
I
mean, that was my loss was basically me choking, but we're not gonna say that they cheated me out of a win. So I need my rematch, JL. All right, guys. Again, I appreciate it. Spent an hour and a half with you guys. It was great. I love it. I would stay on here forever, but I'm already in trouble for breaking my own rules, as Sully pointed out. So, yeah, it was fun. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you please, if you like this content, it's free. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button and that thumbs up, and that helps us out a ton. We have a lot of content dropping with this draft coming over there on rookiedraftguide.com. Sully said it. You said 107?
Yeah, I think it's the number. I think, and I hate to tell you this, but we need to add some more guys.
We do have some more guys to add, but we've covered 107 already. We've dropped videos for 40, some of them on our YouTube channel here. You can go back and watch those. We've got more coming, and it's $6 a month. All of our analysts over there, they rate them on 8 categories.
Yep.
6 or 8, whatever it is. I'm brain farting. Not only that, but they also put in their draft ranges, right? This is the earliest I'm willing to take this player. This is the latest I'm willing to let him fall. They do that for every rookie on that list. We're updating it daily. $6. That also gets you action on RotoHeat.com for rookie ADP, for Superflex and 1QB startup ADP, and the new rankings that we'll have coming out from all our different analysts over here at RotoHeat.com. So we appreciate it. If you guys can give us a little bit of support, everybody that has, it's great. But that's going to be our night. Make sure. Oh,
I know. Sorry, Rick, real quick. I know you're trying to wrap up, but that's just the offensive side of the football, those 107 guys. There's the defensive side that the guys have been grinding out as well.
Oh yeah. I was 100% sure you were getting ready to say trading makes fantasy fun, and I was gonna see Josh get
I
excited.
should have. I should have.
But
That'd have been pretty
but
good.
Sully, just tell them where they can find you and everything too as well, real quick.
Oh, real quick, just rotoheat.com. I drop a little bit of content there. I have my own podcast that I try to get out once a week. Sully's 2 Cents is available pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. If you listen to that, I'd be truly appreciative of that. And Facebook and Discord and here and anywhere anybody will have me. And I'm on Twitter as well.
There I go, hitting buttons on the stream deck. So I'm up there while you're talking. But you can find me at RotoHeatRick on Twitter. And I love talking to everybody. If you do hit me up and I don't get right back to you, I'm not ignoring you. Just yell at me and be like, hey, asshole, respond to me. And I'll make sure to get back to you. Times are busy. But again, Sully, Scott, loved it. Had a very fun hour and a half. Thank you to everybody in the chat, everybody that did hit that like button, everybody that has hit that subscribe. And Brad and Sully will be back next Tuesday with the Dynasty HeatSeekers. Monday, the IDP guys will be back. And next Thursday, the Devi stream will be back. And then I will have a show. JL's trying to distract me from ending the show, so I got to get out of here.
Going.
So goodbye.